This is episode 97 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, our guest is Josh Smith. Josh is a master knife maker and the man behind Montana Knife Co. This podcast is brought to you by Kafaru International. Kafaru makes absolutely bomb-proof gear that is second to none. Kafaru.net, folks. There are a few groups in North America that put boots to the ground, like the Wild Sheep Society of BC. Contrary to popular belief, Wild Sheep Society BC isn't just about sheep. The majority of their projects benefit a variety of ungulates and other wildlife. Check them out at www.wildsheepsociety.com. Great folks over there. I'm a Monarch member. You should be too. And as always, go check out our friends over at Just Shooting Arrows. Just Shooting Arrows is BC's premier archery shop.
We love taking that drive through from Banff to Jasper, and I used to drive that a lot when I'd go to see my grandpa up there in Burns Lake.
Yeah,
and then I hunted between Grand Cache and Grand Prairie for moose one year, kind of right out of high school. Got a nice moose up there.
That's wicked. Go ahead, Wix.
So your grandpa, was this your dad's side?
My mom's, yeah.
Your mom's, so he's from he's from there originally, kind of.
No, he's from the States. It's interesting. He ended up, I don't quite know how I think he met a gal somehow, and she was from up there, and so he moved up there. Like in the early 80s, late 70s, and he was a logger. He started logging up there, and he was also a rancher, and he managed ranches my whole time my mom was growing up. And but they moved up there and kind of started logging in the bush, and then kind of helped his new wife at the time build their ranch there on South Bank. And actually, technically, about a week after I was born, we moved there. My parents tried to move up there in 81, but interest rates were so bad and they were broke and couldn't afford to stay there. So they landed back here in Montana. I was like 6 months old at that time.
Yeah, that Burns Lake is pretty rough country too. My buddy that lives up there, he's he has the big trap line in the area, and yeah, like I was saying, his grandfather was a gunsmith there. Pretty cool country, though.
It is, yeah. It's full of bears, black bears, and moose, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I wish my parents would have stayed there at least just long enough to get me dual citizenship. That would have been nice.
Yeah,
could have hunted up there easier.
I'm definitely gonna ask my buddy Ed there if his family knows your family. That'd be super interesting. I'm sure they will. I mean, Burns Lake isn't a big area.
Yeah, my uncle, he's been there for 40 years now. So he my uncle Mike Robertson is his name. He works for the Cheslada Indian tribe. He kind of started working for them when can't remember the name of that big company there. They actually flooded a bunch of that area, and my uncle just started kind of helping him out with some stuff and working for him. And shit, he's been working for him forever. I think he's kind of part Indian now. He's worked for him forever.
Right on. So, that's cool.
Yeah, he's pretty well known in the area.
So then you grew up in Montana, eh?
Yeah. My mom was born and raised in Montana, or born here anyway. And like I say, my grandpa bounced around on managing ranches, and but she was born here. My dad was born and grew up on a ranch in southeast Colorado, but they both wanted to move back here when I was born or whatever. So they pitched a penny on a map when they left Canada, and it landed on a town called Ovando here, so they drove, they'd never really been there. So they drove to Ovando. My aunt and uncle were following them. They kind of all came together, and they drove into Ovando about 11 o'clock at night. And Ovando's basically just a bump in the road. There's nothing there hardly. And so they drove down the road to Lincoln, and their camper froze up that night or the next night. And like 2 days later, they bought a house, and that's just, they didn't know a soul there. That's just where they decided to live.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, now they're there still today. So
it's wild.
Yeah. Lincoln's kind of up in the mountains. It's, right along the Continental Divide. So it borders the Bob Marshall Wilderness, to the north. So like one of our knives is called the Stonewall. Stonewall Mountain is kind of right to the north of Lincoln there. And that's right on the edge of the Bob Marshall. And so it's great hunting and fishing, and it's the home of the Unabomber. I guess we're famous for that.
That's exactly exactly what you want to be known for, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
We got one of those in my hometown too. So
yeah, I think every town has one, whether they know it or not.
No kidding. That's not good.
I was gonna say that Stonewall Skinner, that's got to be one of your best sellers, hey?
Yeah, people like that one for sure. Yeah, it's pretty good, pretty usable knife, pretty nice knife.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good stud.
So you started out quite young here by the looks of it, eh?
Yeah, I was playing Little League baseball, and my coach was making knives, and he'd bring them, like hunting knives. He was kind of just getting started himself, and he would bring knives to practice and show parents. Of course, I was an 11-year-old kid, thought knives were awesome, and loved the idea of hunting and doing all that. And so my parents bought me one of his knives for Christmas, and then he invited me up to his shop, and I made one, and I made one or two there, and then I think he probably, because he had an annoying kid in the shop, he said, "You're going to have to make these on your own." So I had a lawn mowing business, and worked in my parents' excavation business too. So I took that money and I bought a kind of a cheap piece of shit belt grinder.
Yeah.
And started making them at my parents' house. And then I just started kind of adding equipment. And of course he kept mentoring me, but I was really doing all the work at my shop, just showing him and having him tell me what I needed to be doing better. Kind of just went from there. Yeah, it was kind of wild. I joined the American Bladesmith Society when I was 12 or 13, and then tested for the journeyman certificate, kind of journeyman stamp, they call it, when I was 15, and passed that. And then I ended up passing the mastersmith test when I was 19. So kind of a cool time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding. That's that's cool, man, that you've been, the fire has stayed burning after all these years, Yeah. It's been a long, it's kind of crazy. It doesn't seem that long, but that's been 30 years ago, so it's kind of wild. Yeah. But, I mean, I through high school, between sports and working in my parents' business, we were in excavation. So in the summertime, it's kind of 7 days a week doing that stuff. But I was making knives before and after school, and I got pretty good and reached some pretty cool goals when I was a kid, but still like just kind of kept improving. I became a full-time knife maker kind of after I duck hunted my way right out of college. Flunked out of college after about a year, and professor asked us to not come to class in our waders anymore, so we decided not to come to class. Makes a lot of sense.
I wasn't smart enough to get the engineering degree anyway, so so I went full-time making knives, and I did that for about 10 years, and I was making kind of high-end customs.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Your kind of business has changed a little bit the past, 12 months or something, huh?
Yeah, for sure. So I I did the custom knife thing for, like I said, about 10 years. And, you know, I was reaching really high levels in the knife world in that particular area, but making high-end custom knives one knife at a time is kind of a tough way to make a living. I mean, it's, you know, you're making one knife, and if you screw it up or have an issue or somebody doesn't pay you, or, you know, whatever, it's just a kind of the starving artist thing. You know, one minute you're rich, you sell a bunch of knives at a show, and then you come home, pay all your bills, and you're poor again. So it's kind of a tough way to go, but I enjoyed it, and I got pretty damn good. But in '08, when the market was kind of getting squirrely, and if you watch the news, we were in a recession, and by 2010, you know, they were talking we were going to be heading into a depression. If you know, it's kind of like today, if you watch the news, the world's always ending. And so I ended up I had 4 young kids, and I had an opportunity to take a job for the local power company. I was going to be a welder for them, but after I got hired on with them, I kind of switched over to the electric side. I ended up getting an apprenticeship and became a journeyman lineman. Worked on the power lines and stuff. And I kind of did that. It's that kind of that guaranteed job, you know, it's like go to work every day, 8 to 4:30, make good money, have benefits, kind of all the, like, I guess kind of what you'd call the perfect job. I mean, I did love it. It was fun. One day you're digging with a backhoe, putting in, you know, underground wire. And the next day you're hiking through the mountains, cutting trees out of lines and fixing broken power poles, you know. So it's a cool job, but I always wanted to still do the knife thing. And I always had the idea of Montana Knife Company. In fact, registered the name with the state of Montana when I was 19.
Oh, nice.
And I always wanted to, as a custom maker, I always had guys asking me like, hey, can you I want to buy my boy a hunting knife or my dad a hunting knife. But it's hard to make one knife at a time and keep the price like reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, an $800 hunting knife or $1,000 hunting knife, there's not a lot of people that can afford that, and then they don't want to use it, you know. And I was always frustrated because I just never felt like any of the actual knife companies out there, the big ones, gave a shit about hunters. And I don't think, I could just tell by using their knives that the people designing them and making them definitely weren't hunters. Mm-hmm. It was like an afterthought. They were making pocket knives, and then they decided to come out with a line of hunting knives. And it was pretty clear to me that they weren't legitimate hunters. So kind of long story, but short, but somewhat short, but I got remarried, and my wife started encouraging me to do this kind of dream that I had. And, so I built some prototypes and, found a guy to kind of build me a website, and we launched Montana Knife Company right in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. And, January 1st, basically, of 2021, I quit my lineman job.
There you go.
It's kind of exploded from there. It's kind of insane.
A buddy of mine, Sky, I mention him every time we do a knife podcast, but he's like a hardcore knife guy. Like knows all the knives, knows all the knife makers, right? And he sent me a cool article about you, and the heading of it was the American dream is alive and well. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and you always, like I say, man, you watch the news, and it just doesn't seem to matter where you are in the world. If you watch the news, it's always, the world's always ending, and someone's being oppressed, and there's no chance, everybody's looking for a handout. And I don't know. It's, to me, you can still have a dream, and you can still work really fucking hard and accomplish pretty cool shit. I wasn't rich, I was just working I had a good job, but I was just an average blue collar job, guy. And, when I quit my job, I didn't take a paycheck in this company for 4 or 5 months, and kind of dwindled our savings the little bit we had down. But I kind of always knew if I totally failed, I could always go back to being a lineman. There's always those jobs. But we, built 200 knives initially, which when I was making one knife at a time, 200 seemed like a crazy amount. But built those knives, and then once I sold them, we took that money and I think we did a couple hundred more, and then that next time we did 400, and kind of just started building on itself. We didn't really borrow any money or do anything crazy. We just kind of like built it the old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're nowhere near done yet, but I actually feel like now we're getting a pretty solid foundation, where it seems like this thing's actually going to work.
Yeah.
So, but I think people in the hunting industry that I've been around, like, I was one of the best knife makers in the world on the custom side, but that didn't mean shit about building a production knife company.
No.
Yeah, it's like a guy that builds, custom cowboy boots, and then the next thing you know, he tells you he wants to build Nike. That's a whole different ball game. So I'm kind of a dummy. So I mean, I've been learning a lot about how to build a production knife company.
Yeah. It's always interesting to scale a business like this too, right? Where, like you're talking about, you start out with a run of 200 and then scale accordingly. And I really like what you're doing with the way you're releasing knives. You're making it so guys can get them, and you're coming out with variety often. It's cool.
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, we've definitely pissed some people off because they want to go buy a knife and they get beat on a drop or whatever. And I think some people initially thought we were like kind of playing with the numbers or faking it, because people would be like, what are you, dropping 10 knives or what? And it's like, no, actually there was like 500 in that drop. But the reason I'm doing that and I don't take pre-orders is, man, I refuse to take somebody's money until I can mail them something. Mm-hmm. And I don't like the pressure of having somebody then emailing me for the next 2 weeks. And we've had some knife models. We have some stuff coming out you guys haven't even seen yet that I thought we were going to have out 3 months ago. Well, if I'd have sold pre-orders on that, I'd have people screaming their ass off at me right now. So the nice thing is I would rather make it and spend my money first to make it and then sell it to you, If we have a screw up, at least I'm dealing with my money and not other people's. And so that's kind of been our model, is we make as much as we can make, and then we drop it, we sell it, hopefully, and then we make more, And the goal is definitely to have knives available for sale all the time on our site at some point. It just, every time I think we make enough, we sell them, which is kind of wild.
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I definitely think, man, you guys, I'm sure, obviously you guys have used knives a ton. And the number one thing I always heard in my shop, people would walk in and, hey, can you sharpen these knives for me? Whatever random companies they were. And people tell me I suck at sharpening. I can't sharpen. And then they hand me a knife where even fairly new knives that the edge geometry was super thick. And a lot of these companies, there's a lot of kind of, I think, just bullshit, frankly, behind a lot of the marketing stuff that goes on with some of these like high-tech stainless steels.
Yeah.
And they're making these stainless steels like what can we possibly make that like holds an edge just a little bit longer? And so they make these steels that are crazy hard and crazy wear resistant, which, I mean, in theory, that's good, but I don't care what you make, it's going to go dull. Like every knife is going to go dull. Mm-hmm. There's not a knife out there that doesn't go dull. And so my question is when it goes dull and you're in the middle of nowhere, can you resharpen it? Can you touch it up easily and quickly? Mm-hmm. And, or can you sharpen it when you get back home? And very few people even with a nice stone, can resharpen some of these knives out there. And I always tell people, the steel that we're using, the 52 and 100 ball bearing steel, no companies are using it because it's kind of a pain in the ass to finish. Like, we put some more time into it, but one, ball bearings are made to resist wear in industry. They have been for 100 years. Like, every machine that you see in the world has ball bearings in it. Mm-hmm. And those are made to sit there and resist wear. So it's clearly tough stuff. And the other really great thing is this stuff resharpens really easy. You can just do a couple quick passes on a stone and you're back going again. And I'd rather my knife go dull a tiny bit earlier, but then be able to just reach over, touch it up real quick, and be right back where I was and going again.
Yeah, be a workable metal, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is I mean, I make our knives, even our bigger knives, they're as light as possible because guys are carrying a lot of shit in the mountains, and I just don't think you need a big, heavy knife. And our knives are made for cutting and for field dressing animals. They're not necessarily, the knives I have now, we are going to be coming out with a bushcraft knife that you can do whatever the hell you want with it, pry and chop and whatever. But that comes with limitations, right? Like, it's going to be heavier. It's going to be a little thicker edge geometry. But if I'm making you a knife to go on a moose hunt or a goat hunt, I want that thing to cut as freely as possible and not weigh any more than it needs to. Mm-hmm. And that thinner edge geometry is super critical. Like, when you're sharpening a knife, you're removing steel from the edge. That's what's happening. Well, if you have a bunch of unneeded steel behind the edge, you're just fighting that steel when you're trying to resharpen, Something
that we've experienced in a lot of different knives, I think Wasey's experienced in some, and so have I, is getting a higher end knife and it having a crappy heat treat. And I wanted to bring this up because I don't know if a lot of people know this. Like, you do everything from, on your custom side, you do everything from like forging your own billets to everything else. You get into the blacksmith side of stuff too. Yep.
Exactly. No, on the custom stuff, like you say, I don't let anybody else touch my stuff. I go from start to finish, forging it all the way through. On this production side, we have some stuff done out of house because of the scale. Like, I don't have a laser to cut the blades, right? And no, heat treat is critical. And, it starts with steel selection first and foremost. You have to have the right steel to begin with. And then you have to ask yourself what you're going to use that blade for and what heat treat is the best for that. A lot of companies are trying to make knives that are unbreakable, right? They don't want it to fail. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm here to tell you our knives are not unbreakable. Like, and probably drives my business partner crazy, but like, you can break the tip off our knife if you do something stupid with it. But it's not made to pry. If you're going to cut the ivories out of an elk, learn how to do it, or pop them out with the butt end of the handle or a rock or a freaking stick or whatever. But you can cut down along the gums and do it the right way. But if you just stick the tip down under there and you pry, there's a chance you can break the tip off. Now, I could make that tip unbreakable, but then 99% of the time you're just using that knife to cut. It's going to cut like shit. So I'd rather have the 99% of the time that knife cut like crazy and cut like a laser. And then just know, like, that knife, out of thousands of knives we've made now, I think I've had like 5 back that were broke. and they were doing, and so we just ship them a new knife and say, hey, you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But heat treat's critical. It's absolutely critical. And so people will heat treat knives and they'll even maybe leave them a little bit softer sometimes so they're not as breakable. Or they make it, they're out of a steel that's super, super hard. So then they got to leave them thick because those knives are brittle when they're hard. There's a lot to it. I mean, there's a ton to that heat treating.
Yeah, I think.
I just want to
Go ahead, wait, sir.
I wanted to ask before we got off the hard knife sharpening thing. I got a few knives that have S30V, and they are a motherfucker to sharpen. And like I can do it. I got a belt sharpener, but it just seems like you got to just hog material off to get them things back around where they need to be.
Yep.
And I don't know why everyone thinks like S30V is the way to go, because I don't know if it is.
I don't like it, and what's even worse is S90V. But this is what I'm talking about the marketing. They'll come out and there's a catcher scale, right? It's a scale that tells you the wear resistance of a steel, and it's all scientific. They do all these cut tests, where it's not just, Bill told me he did 12 elk with a blade. Like, it's an actual cut test where they're measuring the amount of abrasion that, an edge can put up to. And, S30V came out. It is a very wear resistant steel. It's exactly what I was talking about. It will resist. It'll resist wear well right out of the gate. If they send it to you dead sharp right out of the box, it's going to last quite a while. S90V is going to last even longer. But you're kind of fucked once it goes dull. And especially in the field with unless you take a belt sharpener up the mountain with you, you're screwed, right? And also that steel is really brittle when it's hard and it's thin. It's easy to break. So the other thing that I can guarantee you that you have going on, I'll bet any amount of money you want that if I shipped you one of our knives at the same size and use of that knife, that our edge is probably at least half as thin. Blade's probably nearly half as thin. And so now when you're resharpening it, you have a super hard steel and you have twice as much of it than you really need, because they made it thick, because that steel's brittle when it's hard. Our steel that we're using, there's this balance, right? It's kind of an inverse ratio. The harder a steel is, the more brittle it is, right? And so when you temper a blade down after heat treatment, the lower you bring the hardness down, the tougher the blade gets. So we try to figure out this balance, right? Where how hard can we leave it and have it still be reasonably tough? And like, we took our Beartooth blade, and I don't know if you guys saw this video, but it's our Beartooth knife. It's kind of a big, like, fleshing knife we developed with Cole Kramer for like fleshing out grizzly bear hides and brown bears.
Yeah, Cole's wicked. Yeah,
he's awesome. We bent that knife 90 degrees in the vise without breaking it, and it came back to almost dead straight.
That's rad.
I seen that video.
Yeah, and so that's the steel we're using right now. Our little short knives, our little 3.5, 4 inch knives, you're not going to bend those 90 degrees. But the point is you can put them through a lot. Mm-hmm. And they're not made to bend 90 degrees. I mean, they're made to cape shit out and gut animals out and whatever, right? But no, that S30V and S90V is exactly what I'm talking about. Now, we just came out with some knives in this. It's brand new steel on the market. It's called CPM MagnaCut.
Oh, cool.
And it was developed by one of my good friends' sons that became a master metallurgist. This guy was a incredible knife maker for the last 40 years. And his son, kind of a nerd guy, frankly, like super smart, became got his master's degree in metallurgy and developed this steel specifically for knife makers. And he walks that line between hardness and cutting ability, but also toughness. Toughness is super important to have. It's not just a tip breaking off, but it's also to be able to have the edge be as thin as possible and not chip if you hit a bone, something like that. So yeah, I get to talking too much, and
no, it's cool, man. We're both we both have metalworking backgrounds, so this is fun for us.
Good.
So I wanted to just say one more thing with that S30V. Like with that S30V, like when I take it I'll usually get one moose out of it. And if I'm on a multi-day hunt with multiple species, after you're done skinning usually one animal, I just use it to stir mountain houses, because that's all it's good for, because it's dull. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like I can't sharpen the fucking thing after I use it unless I got a belt sander. Like it's right. I would never be able to touch that blade up in the field. It'd be impossible.
Right. And I can guarantee you, I'll ship you a Stonewall. And I mean, the amount of people that, I mean, we're a fairly new company, right? I mean, quite frankly, we're barely over a year old from when I quit my job. And the amount of people that, and the testimonials of like, holy shit, I cannot believe like how, I was just talking to a guy last night. He's the guy that won the world elk calling championship. He's a hunting freaking fool. And he used one knife last year, guides like ton of elk, ton of deer, like all kinds of animals. And he says he just can't believe how well that knife has worked for him, you know?
Well, yeah.
So his name's Cody McCarthy. He's a legit hunter. But yeah, no, I'll ship you one and you can try it out and see for yourself what you think. But I 100% I agree. Now this is why the replaceable blades became so big. And I can't stand those freaking things. Now I can tell you, I understand why people use them. If you're a guide, you know, I've talked to Cole about this. If you're a guide and you're doing animal after animal and you're just trying to get shit done and it's 1 a.m. and it's pissing rain and you don't really have time to screw around, right? You just need to get the job done and get out of there. However, I think that people are seeing, one, how many people break those blades off inside of an animal, and the next thing you know, now you got a razor sharp freaking blade floating around in the cavity while you're in there trying in the dark, with a headlamp on, trying to cut the diaphragm out of something
or pop a joint.
Yeah. Exactly.
I carry some replaceable blade stuff, but just out of being lazy, but I also carry a fixed blade.
And that's what I always tell people, like, if you want to carry those, that's fine. I really do think if you take any amount of time at all, like 10 minutes and watch one of my sharpening videos and then use one of our knives, most people do that because they don't, just like Wasey said, they don't want to have to, they either can't or don't want to have to deal with resharpening in the field. But if you have the right little small little ceramic stone in your pack and you reach over there and do a quick touch up with your fixed blade and you're right back to work, a lot of people have started leaving those replaceable blades at home. But I agree, like, if you are going to carry those, and I can understand why, God, man, you got to go in the field, especially if you're doing any kind of backcountry stuff. You got to have a fixed blade, like a legit fixed blade. Yeah,
absolutely. I think sort of for me, kind of what happened is I have ran fixed blades in the past as well. And I've kind of been left wanting more, as they were pretty hard, like pretty tough to resharpen. And that's sort of where I was at. And actually a kind of knife maker out of BC here, our buddy Mike Jones. I don't know if you know him, maybe.
I don't think so.
Yeah, there's so many knife makers now. It's
under every rock.
Crazy. But Mike's a real good cat, and he does a lot of something that I think you'll think is probably pretty cool. He does some like metal repurposing. Like, he lives up in logging country, so he does a lot of like knives out of saw blades and stuff like that. And they're tough, but they're sure easy to touch up compared to some of the other stuff I had been using previously.
So that what he's probably, and if he's a pretty decent knife maker and he's getting his edge geometry down right, the steel he's using, if he's using a saw blade, it's very likely 15N20 or L6. Yeah. And that's the old school saw blade steel, Swedish steel. When I buy steel for my Damascus, the high nickel content steel I use is 15N20, which is It comes out of Sweden. It's the old Swedish saw blade steel. It's what they use forever. The other steel that you'll see old timers use a ton, I used a bunch of it forever when I was a kid. You know, you always hear people say, "Oh, I know a guy that makes really nice knives out of spring steel," and that's 5160, like car springs. I don't know about the Chinese cars, but the old good cars.
Yeah.
But both of those steels, you're exactly right. If you do those knives right and you heat treat them right, again, perfectly easy to resharpen. And they last a long time, you know.
Yeah, that's what I've been finding, and it's definitely making me go kind of that direction again. You know, I have confidence again. That's the whole thing for me. Like when you're back there, you know, you climb up the goat mountain, you get back there, and then you're looking at your knife, and you're like, man, will this thing work on this animal or what? It's a confidence. Yeah. It becomes a confidence thing, right? Yeah,
for sure. And also, it just cracks me up. Before I launched this company, I would tell people, dude, I have hunters and we all know them. Hell, half the time I am this guy that you're spending $250, $300 on a set of pants and a top and your freaking mid layer and your outer and your freaking rain gear. And then you're buying a $3,000 spotting scope that you probably don't need because all you ever do is hunt and timber. And then you're buying a set of Swaro binos and the fanciest scope on your rifle and a custom long range rifle, even though you can't hunt, usually shoot more than 200 yards in the timber we're in. And you buy all this shit and then you spend $28 on a knife that you may potentially have to depend on. Yeah. And, you know, guys would be like, well, I don't know, $300 is kind of expensive for a knife. And it's like, dude, you just spent $3,000 on a fucking spotting scope.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, when it comes to gear,
but I think,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think with the society's taken a little bit of a shift. We went the last probably, 30 years of a throwaway society, right? Use your razor blade once, throw it out.
Yeah.
Mike Jones said this before. And it's just like, I think we're coming back full circle to where people are starting to appreciate quality products and they will start to pay, So
I've been saying that. It's funny. I've said that for the last several years now in my videos is if you walk into Walmart or Target or I don't care, name a store, hell, Cabela's, and you look around, almost everything is made to throw away. And what we don't generally in the history of, of people, we don't throw away knives, guns, jewelry, and artwork. Those like four things you don't throw away. And it kind of just drives me crazy that I can't tell you how many times people have walked into my shop and asked me to sharpen up some worn out, and I don't care. Like it could be the cheapest factory knife or it could be a custom that somebody made 100 years ago. But they asked me to sharpen something and clean it up because it was grandpa's old knife. Mm-hmm. And maybe the tips broke off or whatever. And they just want me to like touch it up, but they're not throwing it away because it was their grandfather's. Nobody's passing a replaceable blade down to their grandson.
No.
So I always say, like, even though our knives are kind of quote unquote factory knives, I can guarantee you that most of the knives we make will never get thrown away. They'll get retired, put in a safe, given to a grandkid or whatever. But I agree. People are, I think, appreciating quality, and I think they're appreciating products that are made in the U.S., made in Canada, made in some of these countries that do quality work, Germany or Austria or whatever.
Yeah, not China.
Yeah, not China. So I think I agree with you. I think it's part of why we've been successful. I think our timing was kind of good just because we were, I think, in that phase where people are tired of shit. They're tired of poor quality.
Yeah. I think you also just have
it was like when I was.
Go ahead, Grace, sir.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's also because you have just a badass product too. I mean, like you look at your blade lineup and it's just cool, man. There's something for everybody from, that speed goat and, you guys were just talking about that Stonewall, and then there's that big giant bear tooth thing, man. Like that thing's badass. Who doesn't want that thing, right?
Yeah. And I honestly, when you look at our knives, they're kind of stupid simple. I mean, as a guy who's used hunting knives a lot, I'm not going to be a guy that's going to come out with a ton of marketing bullshit about like all this fancy crap you put on a knife that frankly you don't need. Like that thing needs to just be rock solid and needs to be easy. Needs to be sharp when you get it and easy to resharpen when it goes dull. Like that's it. And I think the comfort of the handle, the design behind the handle, and why I design them the way I do. Now, some people, you can definitely get into a debate, like say like our Blackfoot or our Speed Goat. You'll have a guy say, I hate having that much of a tip on a knife. I want something more like a Stonewall that's less tip, more belly. Mm-hmm. And then you'll have the next guy that says, yeah, I'm a guide and I cape out, 6 goats a year and a bunch of elk or deer. And they want that tip to go around the base of horns and turn, getting the tear ducts around an eye. And they want a tip on a knife. And we're going to keep coming out with stuff. Like, frankly, there's a lot more knives I want to come out with, but again, we're kind of building this company one knife at a time. Mm-hmm. I want to come out with more of an actual caping knife and some stuff, but, yeah, I appreciate what you're saying there. I do think we've kind of got a pretty decent line. That knife we did with Cole Kramer, that bear tooth, he sits there and fleshes bear hides in his garage after he's done guiding, when he's back in town between hunts. Mm-hmm. And he's taking big, long strokes on those bear hides, getting all that fat and meat off. And he wanted a blade with very little tip. And the reason it curves up is as he extends his arm down that board, he's got cutting edge all the way to the tip,
Super cool.
And it's a little bit flexible. So it can work around some of the curves just a little bit, So yeah, he's been happy with that.
That's wild. I see you guys strapping them to their bino harness.
Yeah, that's something, and some guys don't like doing it, but honestly, our sheaths, we make them tight enough they fit in the sheath to where you're not going to lose it. I hate straps and buckles. Yeah. I say that even though our chef's knife's coming out, they're going to have a protective slip on the edge that's got a strap to hold it on, but that's a chef's knife. I'm doing that, so if you want to throw a chef's knife in your luggage and throw it on a Super Cub and fly into a base camp, you can have a chef's knife in camp, but it'll have a sheath on it where it's not cutting shit up in your bag.
That's right.
But as far as our knives that get carried, I frankly think your knife should always be available to use. I'm not a big fan of stuff on your belt because now that the way these packs are designed, that waist belt, you want to be able to cinch that thing down and carry the load on your hips. But and again, some of these packs are gigantic and your knife's in the bottom of a bag when you need it. I like having a knife available right on my pack strap. The other thing is I always know it's there. I can see, I've got my knife. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it sounds a bit ridiculous, but worst case scenario, if you got a mountain lion jump on your back when you're bow hunting in Montana, I'd rather have a knife available than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't really encourage people to fight lions with their knives, but I'd be glad I had it.
I think that's the next model, right? The Lion Fighter.
Yeah, the Lion Fighter. Yeah. It's going to hang off your chest, but it's going to be about 1.5 feet long.
There you go. It's a sword.
I want you to. Yeah. That's a big fucking problem for me is with packs and knives, and I've talked about it before, but I wanted to ask you with that Kydex clip. So like when it clips on and you roll that knife down straight with your strap, like does that clip rotates on the backside so you can go from there to your belt and then turn it so it's like more scout carry?
Yeah, exactly. So that you just take 2 screws out if you want. You can you take those 2 screws out and you just flip it 90 and screw it back together, what I actually like about it though, is I almost never do that. And the reason why is when I clip that on my pack, that knife hangs there. You can have it hanging up or down, depending on how you want to carry it. But the way that works with it, say it's hanging straight down, you can unclip that off your pack and clip it right over your belt. Say you take your pack off and you're going packless or something on a final stock. If you want your knife or whatever, you can take that clip off and clip it right on your belt without adjusting anything. And your knife will at that point be a horizontal carry on your belt. I don't like the vertical carry on my belt because I feel like it jabs into my side.
Mm-hmm.
I like the horizontal. It's running the direction of your belt, and you can kind of slide it around on your belt out of the way a little. And I do like that on my side where you can slide it around behind you just a little bit. So it's not like you guys have a lot of brush in Canada. I know when I was in the Willows moose hunting up there, I actually lost a rangefinder off my belt. It's part of the reason I don't like carrying shit on my belt. My belt actually, I don't know how it's possible, but my belt actually came unbuckled in that brush, like undone. And I looked down and my belt's just like flopping, and my rangefinder had slipped off the belt. That brush, those brush willows were brutal.
Yeah. The brush is so bad up here, it almost loses your virginity to it. It's just rips your clothes right off your back. So.
No, it's true. It happened to me, but it was worth it. I got a moose. So
there you go.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
I do like our clip real quick, just from the standpoint we came up with this, where the way that clip works is you can slide it over and it kind of clips over like the pack strap on your pack or your belt, but you don't have to undo anything. Like if you have a bunch of shit on your belt, you can just clip that on anywhere on your belt, and you can take it on and off without unbuckling your belt. So I'm not trying to be freaking salesman-y here.
I don't think you need to. If you look around your website, there's not much you need to try to sell, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
That's
no, but I think
go ahead.
I think that Kydex clip solves a lot of problems that a lot of backpack hunters have, and it's leather sheaths are fine and dandy and everything, but when you have a leather sheath and you got your pack on, you're pretty much screwed, right?
Yeah, I personally prefer leather if I'm wearing my knife to go out to dinner and it looks good, right?
Yeah.
And I love the traditional look of leather. I mean, I prefer leather in every way from the standpoint of just the look. I just think it feels like you're carrying a knife that Grandpa would have carried. Because my grandpa would have been, what's that plastic bullshit you're carrying on your belt? He would have hated it. However, when he would have used it, he'd have been like, yeah, that's better. Because like leather gets wet, it stretches, it loses its shape, it stores water and blood and shit. And, with a Kydex, you can throw it in a dishwasher when you get home. You can wash it out in the creek, like whatever. And it's just rock solid, and it doesn't lose its shape. And they actually have even an adjustable screw where you can tighten down the retention when it does start to maybe loosen up a little, where it's tough to do with a leather sheath. You can reform a leather sheath at home, get it really hot and soak in water and reform it and let it dry. But that only lasts a little while.
Yeah. It can be an issue for sure.
But everything we do with our hunting knives, I mean, I feel like the name, like Montana, Alberta, British Columbia, like I just feel like you have this, Wyoming, North Dakota, like Idaho. I feel like some of these states and some of these places have an assumed quality. If it's made there, it seems like it's going to be something that's quality. And if it's a Montana Knife Company knife, like everything we do, I try to be sure that it's solid and it's quality, and it's like the quality you would assume that you would get out of Montana,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when we come out with tactical knives down the road, I will seek out advice from dudes who have served in the military and done rad shit, but because I'm not I'm the last guy to tell you how to fight with a knife. Like, that's not my lane. But when it comes to a hunting knife, I kind of know what I'm doing with that stuff. It's what I've been born and raised to kind of do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the guy you need making them, right? The guy that's used them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking, I'm not going to name the company because I think people should buy all kinds of knives. I don't give a shit what knife you have on your belt. Like, I love knives. I was raised by knife makers. I'll never talk shit about any knife companies, but I was talking to somebody that worked at a very, very, very large company here in the US. And he said, when they came out with a hunting line of knives, when the guy was working there, he said, out of several hundred employees, he said they had like 3 people that actually hunted. And those 3 people had nothing to do. Like, they were like in packaging and shipping or marketing or something. Oof. And, you know, it kind of was like solidified exactly what I thought was happening at some of these large companies. I mean, let's face it. A lot of these large companies that are making knives are, you know, in places of the country that you don't really associate with hunters. Mm-hmm. So I think the results speak for themselves when you get the knife. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast before. It seems like, you know, any really truly great product or idea is kind of born out of necessity and to fill an actual need, not just to make money or be famous or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I always tell people, like, when it comes to designs, man, just about every damn knife in the world's been freaking made. It's pretty hard to come up with something that where somebody goes, well, I've never seen that before. I mean, I'm making drop point hunters and knives with a point on them. It's not like it's incredibly groundbreaking. I do think our design of the handles and the way they fit and feel in your hand makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of great knives that feel great in the hand out there. It's not like we're the first ever to do that. But I do think there's a few certain things that in general knife companies have not been doing, which is making the knives as thin as possible, not worrying about the dumbass that's going to use the knife wrong, but instead making the knife for everyone else that's going to use it the way it's intended. And I think there's a few things that, you know, knife companies haven't been doing that I think has left the door open for us. And just based off of our success, I think it's kind of obviously there was a need, you know? Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, you have massive endorsement from some of our buddies and some, I don't want to say industry heavy hitters, 'cause like anything industry is gay to us. We just want to be friends with cool dudes that do cool shit and that's it. But I mean, some of the guys that are ranting and raving about your product are the real deal, man. And I mean, that's huge.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm proud of that. Like, yeah, I don't really give a shit how many followers you have. There's a lot of douchebags with a lot of followers.
Oh yeah.
But there's also some pretty rad guys with a lot of followers, and there's a lot of our guys that are using our shit with, you know, 1,200 Instagram followers, but they're
killers,
badass killers. Yeah. And guides and people who could give a shit about their Instagram. They just have it to look at cool pictures.
Yeah.
But they like legit gear. You know?
I mean, that's like you saying, "Oh, Cole helped me design a bear tooth." Okay, you're Josh Smith. You're like creme de la creme custom knife maker, but you're gonna listen to the opinion, insight. I don't want to say advice, but like the advice or the needs of a dude that's in the field. Oh, there goes another knife, boys. The advice and the needs of a dude that's in the field using it. And I mean, that's massive, right? That's what makes a good product, in my opinion.
Oh, and I have huge respect, and I mean, and what I like about Cole is he'll also tell me when he doesn't like something that I do, you know, or you know, wants something changed or adjusted or whatever. But I have, just because I grew up hunting, doesn't make me Cole Kramer. Like, that dude's legit, and he's a professional hunter guide. I mean, so. I have a certain amount of experience, but I ask people all the time. And again, I don't care based on their followers, like more on the respect of like, okay, this guy's killed a lot of shit and he's used a lot of knives. And I'm honestly, hopefully I don't come across like I have an ego, because I don't have an ego when it comes to, for example, we're coming out with chef's knives, right? I am not a chef's knife maker. I've made hunting knives and I made high-end like customs. Yeah. And I'm also not a great cook. When you watch me use a chef's knife in the kitchen, I look like I have two left hands probably, like compared to a real actual professional chef. And so I say all that to say, you know, I went out and found one of my friends is one of the best chef's knife makers in the world. And I asked him to design our chef's knives. There you go. And I'm paying him a royalty just because when I have a chef in New York or whatever at a 5-star restaurant pick up one of our knives to use it, I want him to be like, whoever made this knows what they're doing. And I could make a chef's knife and sell it to you, and you'd probably think it's fine. But if an actual chef picked it up, he'd be like, this is a terrible piece of shit. Like, the balance is wrong. The angles are wrong. So anything we do, I'm interested in asking the people that are the best at using them. I want my knife company to be known as like, that dude went out and found one of the best chef's knife makers in the world. Or he asked 5 Navy SEALs and 5 Green Berets and 5 Marines what he thought the best tactical knife would be. There's a lot of booger eaters playing video games that think they can fight with a knife. You know,
I caught some heat on the podcast a while ago. I can't remember what we were talking about, Wasey, but I called somebody a LARPer. And I was just talking shit. And yeah, no, I caught some heat for it. You know what that is, right, Josh?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fairly, I don't have a lot of tolerance. Like, frankly, some of these, I'll piss some people off here. Some of these tactical, quote unquote, tactical knife people, man, they started coming to knife shows, like dressed up in all this shit.
Oh, dude,
looking like vampires.
Bro, I went to SHOT Show in like 2007 or 2008, and I was like, I was young, right? Like I'm 35 now. That was whatever, almost 10 years ago, right? And I'm like looking around, and there's all these dudes like that are just freaking living off McDonald's in full kit. I'm like, bro, you couldn't run down a hallway. What the?
No, that's what I always say. They couldn't run across the mall.
Yeah, like the only place you're running is the food court. What the fuck is going on here? Right.
No, exactly. No, if I actually came after that guy, and I'm not even a trained fighter, if I came after me, he'd probably wet himself. So, no, and that's where, like, with the tactical stuff, as we start to develop what we're going to do for next year, you know, because we do want to come out with some of that stuff. And we have a lot of military guys that are actually carrying stuff we make already.
Yeah.
But that is a place where, okay, our Blackfoot has a really thin tip on it. If I'm sending a knife with a guy to Afghanistan, I want to make that fucker unbreakable.
Yeah.
He's a little less worried about, you know, how many people he can quarter out.
Yeah, you know, totally.
If the edge gets lost, it's not as big a deal as if, you know, he's trying to pry a lock open on a door. He doesn't want that knife breaking. So, you know, when we design stuff, we'll have a combination of, now some of those dudes, it's totally different. They want something they put on their kit that weighs next to nothing. And it's just there to open MREs. And worst case scenario, which almost never happens, they have to pull that knife out in a hand-to-hand situation and stab it in somebody's throat.
Mm-hmm.
But chances are, if you talk to anybody, a Navy SEAL, badass dude, if he's pulling his knife out to use it on someone, there's been so much shit go wrong and so many things been screwed up that they're, probably in a bad situation anyway.
Yeah.
But, again, it depends on who they are. Marines want something different than a dude that's diving in the water or a dude that's jumping out of an airplane. So I want to build knives for each of those people, but I want them to be legit. I don't want to just sit here on my couch and watch Saving Private Ryan and then think I know how to design a trench knife.
I think Seagal movies are clearly the inspiration you need. Yeah, absolutely.
Clearly the foremost expert on that.
I saw you guys did a post a while ago about naming Andy's knife or whatever. I think I commented something about Seagal for sure.
Andy Seagal. I think Andy actually secretly has like a fat head of Seagal in his bedroom.
I'm sure he has a tattoo. A
tramp stamp.
Absolutely. I don't know Andy, and he'll you get to punch me in the gut if we meet Andy. I'm sorry. One thing that I wanted to touch on, and it was really cool to watch, and it's always our mutual friend Trevor Thompson, right? I mean, that dude's a cat that's always he's always pursuing a new skill, right? And he
should get a job.
Should he ever? What a loser! No, but great dude. But it was really cool watching him come out to your shop and do some metalwork and build that folder with you. That was cool.
He's a good guy. He's super talented. He's done a lot of really cool stuff. He's a guy that helps Cole Kramer guide. Trevor's always sending pretty cool pictures. A lot of which we can't post on our Instagram. Just sad, but he's very talented. He's actually quite the artist. I don't think a lot of people know that.
I know, man.
He sits around and draws on his little iPad or whatever, and he caught on quick in that knife making stuff, and he's been up here a couple times. So
he's a
good dude. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it was just really cool watching, a guy like you that really knows what you're doing, kind of taking the time for a dude that's not inside the metalworking space, even
right.
Go from kind of zero to making something really cool and like an heirloom piece that he'll keep forever, right? Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's definitely one of those. I say about the customs I used to do, like those high end customs that I still occasionally do. I'd like more time to do that, but those are like kind of future artifacts or future museum pieces, that folder he made will be around forever.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure we covered knife stuff because you're the knife guy, but I think we would be this podcast would be unauthentic if we didn't ask you what's going on this year, man. Like, what do you got coming up for hunting? The shit that actually matters.
Yeah. Well, hopefully here in the next couple weeks, I'll get my boy out bear hunting.
Rad.
It's funny. We lost a bunch of snow and it was like we were hearing about bears coming out super early here, and then all of a sudden, like winter came back, and the snow levels dropped, and we got a lot of shitty weather for like a month. But it's like the weather in the last couple of days has been gorgeous, and so I think it's really good time right now to start bear hunting. So we'll do that. My boy actually just got his bear hide back from his bear he shot 2 years ago. When he was 12, he got a really nice black bear. So he was stoked about that. We hung that up.
That's wicked.
Bear rug there. This fall, it's kind of cool. I actually kind of got, I don't know how, I've never won anything in my life. And we ended up, I bought some tickets at a Total Archery Challenge and I won a stag hunt in Spain.
Oh, cool.
So Brandon and I are going to go to Spain and hunt red stag with our bows, which will be cool. And then had a guy offer, super nice, a landowner in New Mexico, offer my boy to come down and hunt elk with a bow. So we're going to do a landowner hunt tag down in New Mexico this fall. That'll be awesome. I always take my kids out in eastern Montana in the Missouri River breaks. I always take them out there during rifle season. I have for years. And we usually take my camper out for like a week and just kind of get out cell phone coverage and hunt mule deer in the rut, which is in November, which is always just an amazing time.
It's the best.
Yeah. So we'll do that. I'm sure my girls, my little girl last year, she was never interested in hunting. And then all of a sudden she came to me last year and she's like, Dad, do you mind if I hunt with you this year? I'm like 100%. So we made sure we got her a deer first last year, which was pretty cool. My 13-year-old boy at the time, my back was all jacked up. And so it was kind of cool because a couple miles from the truck when we shot her deer and he packed it all, which was pretty awesome. So he's kind of a giant kid for his age. So he had a new Kafaru pack. He was all excited we loaded the shit out of it and he packed it out.
That's wicked.
That's gangster.
My 5-year-old is all she wants to do is kill stuff, but she's 5.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
No, she's we have her on fishing right now, and she's like every day she wakes up and she's like, Dad, we're not going to school, we're going fishing. And I'm like, little kid, you got to go to school sometimes. No,
that's awesome. Yeah. No, my older 2 girls were more interested in it earlier. My oldest daughter, Demi, she shot a bull elk her first ever opening morning day of rifle season one year.
She's like, Dad, this isn't hard.
Yeah, I was like, this is not. And we were hunting on a piece of property that I probably wouldn't get permission to go hunt myself, but she was a kid and little girl, and he was like, yeah, come on out and hunt elk. And honestly, we hiked in the rain and the dark, and they were actually kind of still bugling from the rut, like those late season early rifle bugles.
Yeah.
And I set her up kind of along this fence line. I just said, stand here with your gun on this brace of this fence. And I said, the elk are going to move to the timber. I sat back in the timber and I said, those elk are going to move up here. Just wait. And I mean, dude, it was like 30 minutes later, 2 bulls just come running up over the hill and then just stopped and turned broadside. It was like, are you serious? And I was waiting and waiting and waiting for the gunshot. And I thought, man, she's freezing up, and I wasn't next to her, so I couldn't talk to her. And then all of a sudden I heard click. Well, she had been trying to pull the trigger and she had her safety on.
Oh no.
And so she took the safety off and smoked him. It was awesome. So
nice.
But yeah, we'll do that. And I'm going to take my wife out elk hunting this fall. She's never hunted, but she's kind of, I think she's getting tired of being a widow in the fall. And now she wants to do a little bit with me.
That's wicked.
So that'll be fun. But yeah, I mean, we're lucky where we live because, with our general season tags, from the 1st of September really till Thanksgiving, you can pretty much hunt. I just put in for our moose, sheep, and goat tags and bison, but I probably won't draw any of those. You never seem to draw them, but I'd love to come hunt up there. I'd love to hunt in the Brooks Range, and I'd love to go to Alaska, but
yeah,
I put in for a tag with Cole Kramer with goat, but I didn't get it. So
soon you will. There you go. That's something to look forward to eventually, eh?
Yeah, but that's the plan for now.
Right on, man.
Go to Total Archery Challenge, and we'll have a booth in July there in Park City, and then we'll do the one in Big Sky, Montana. Have you guys gone to those?
No. We have border issues here, big time. We're. Do you know Alex Nestor?
I don't know him, but I know. Yeah, I know
I'm in a group chat with Alex Nestor, and the name on the group chat is "Great Dudes That Are Stuck in a Liberal Shithole." And that's pretty well sums up what we have going on here. We're not leaving Canada right now, really, because of the border.
That boggles my mind. I just can't believe. I go down a whole rabbit hole there. I would love to come up there. In fact, 2 years ago, I told my boy we were going to go up there fishing by Fernie.
Oh, cool.
And that was right before COVID. And I'm not going to get a vaccination to go fish. That's for sure.
No.
I'm like, well, the rivets there in Canada, they've got, they're bear hunting. They want us to come hunt. But again, I'm just not going to take the jab to go hunt. There's plenty of hunting here. Yeah,
they're cool folks. I got to get Johnny on here, and he's got one of his moose calls behind me here. It's pretty cool.
Oh, those are cool that he builds. Yeah, he builds those.
Yeah.
Hopefully that stuff frees up where you guys can get out of jail.
Yeah.
I for a long time I've joked that I've always wanted the U.S. to take over. Like if you draw a line straight up from the Mississippi up to the North Pole, I said we ought to just take over that part of Canada and trade them the East Coast. So like the whole entire East Coast of Canada and the U.S. can be, I don't pick whatever, U.S., Canada.
Yep.
We'll be the other one on the west side.
That sounds great. I'm into that.
Yeah. And we'll even donate them California and Oregon so they can have some of the West Coast.
Yeah. So. That's all theirs, man.
But
did you ever watch that? Did you ever watch that movie? It was Happy Gilmore with Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when that lady lands on the car and she's like, "Get me out of here." That's what it's like up here right now. Get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's crazy. My uncle, he just came down and because my grandma, his mom passed away here like a couple months ago, and so he came down and he got to the border and he got held up for like 3 days trying to get a COVID test and
no shit,
a bunch of stuff. But
well, speaking of all these kids, I better get some of them to school.
Yeah, sounds good. No, appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, right on. Sorry, thanks for sorry this has kind of been a little bit of a scheduling nightmare here, but we got her together.
In the beginning it was my fault. Yeah, sorry. It's just been kind of crazy. The early morning actually works better because it's before life starts every day.
Yeah, I mean you said in the middle of this thing, you said there, I hope it doesn't seem like I have an ego, and I can tell everybody listening along here, Josh has no ego. He in your emails, it's like, I'm so sorry, yada yada. Like just you can tell you're a genuine great dude, man. And I think me and Wasey are both really glad to see the success you're having with Montana Knife Co. and the continued success of your customs. And it's great to see a hardworking blue collar dude kicking ass and taking names. And the American dream is alive and well, which is cool, man.
No, I appreciate that. That means a lot. And I enjoy your guys' podcast. You can tell you're kind of just regular dudes like us, and enjoyed listening to your guys' podcast. It's always good when you have Snyder on. He's fun to listen to.
Right on.
So, yeah. All right. Well, cool, guys. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. You can follow us on Instagram at Wilderness Locals. If you want to support the podcast, please check out the gear, articles, and whatever else we're up to on the website at www.wildernesslocals.net.